be empathetic, but give real feedback so that you don't lead people in the wrong direction. Like, continue to give them feedback on how they can improve. You see a lot of women will leave the workforce because one of the partners is now decided to stay home, take care of the family. But then women primarily lose out on it, where they will take a 10 to 15 year break, and then the kids will grow up. They're like, we missed out and we don't really know how to get back into the workforce. They're a connected community, they're doing a lot. And for them to be advocates of also bringing some of these health services to Pakistan and really showcasing through their trusted network that, we are Pakistani origin doctors and there's the same level of healthcare available.
Hello and welcome to InferTalks, a podcast where we put you in the room with some of the biggest thought leaders from around the world. Joining us today is Sabina Zafar, who's serving as North America Executive, Digital Transformation and Technology Modernization at Oracle. She has also served as Vice Mayor of San Ramon City in California. Welcome to InferTalks, Ms. Zafar.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ms. Zafar, let's get our conversation started. And I wanted to ask you, what prompted you in the first place to move to the U.S. and start your professional journey? So just tell us a little, as someone, who was at the start of her career, and what are some of the struggles that you had to grapple with?
Well, thank you so much for asking. So my journey was not kind of by choice, but happened. I grew up in a very traditional family, got married early, and, I moved to the U.S. One of my asks of my parent was that as I get married and move to the U.S., I want to continue my studies because I hadn't, quite finished them here, because I was really passionate about just going to college and, math and all of that stuff. So I think that's kind of where my journey started when I moved to the U.S. I started college over there. Very non-traditional journey for me, as, I had my son in the first year. So while most young people would be like, okay, I'm starting, I'm going to do college, just finish my studies, then start something. But I kind of, my, son, I happened to have him early on. But I never let that stop me from pursuing my passion and just continued. So it took longer to graduate from college, but I continued on that journey and, just finished my studies. It was all persistent. It's like things will happen, things will, detract you from what you want to do, but how do you kind of stay persistent and continue that journey? And so from there, after graduation, I had my daughter. So very much, my priority was my kids. But I wanted to make sure that I also kind of stayed connected with my professional career. So I started a company back then. They were not called startups. You just had a company and, I was developing websites. I was doing some small projects on my dining table while the kids were running around. It was still back then, tech was, a career where you could work from home. And still be able to move forward. So I did that for a while. And
so was it a sole person enterprise, or did you have other?
It was a sole person enterprise. I was back then, I kid about it. It was between me and Jeff Bezos, because he started Amazon and I started this e-commerce web development. And, apparently he scaled it. But I built a few e-commerce websites. I was doing that, and that kind of helped me continue in, my career, even as I was parenting and staying at home with my kids.
Interesting.
So, a few years later, I moved to Silicon Valley with both the kids, and I decided it was time to get into corporate America. My younger one was just turning 4. The older one was a few years older. And so literally, I would say in my early 30s is when I started my corporate America tech career. And just started with, the very basics, literally programming and consulting for different companies, having 6-month contracts, getting a break. But I used that opportunity to build from every contract that I did, kind of build up my skill set, build up my career. Before I knew it, I was, leading teams in the US. I was, within for a few years of getting into the tech field, I was managing global teams with some of the companies. I very much started with a pure tech development career and moved more and more into a sales engineering role.
But let me ask you, like, I'm sorry, I'm interjecting you out here, but by conventional wisdom, wouldn't it be too late for someone in their 30s to start their corporate journey? So, like, tell us, like, what were some of the struggles that you had to grapple with?
Absolutely fair question, right? That's what we are made to believe in. That's what we kind of taught, that you have to start straight out of college. Your journey has to follow a specific path. You go to college, you get out, you start your work, and if you don't, you just miss out, and then it's too late, and you really can't go back. And what I say is, age is never a limiting factor, or time is never a limiting factor. It's you that will limit yourself from whatever you want to do. And whenever the chance or the opportunity comes, I would say, just take it and start, and never be afraid to start from scratch or from the bottom, because without learning the basics, without understanding how to, how corporate America works, or how any business or anything works, you really can't grapple how you're going to succeed in that. And then it's your journey. It's up to you how quickly you're able to embrace and rise up and understand and excel at what you're doing. So that was for me, right? I'm like, time is not an issue. I just have to do what I have to do, and I have to look at where I'm taking this and follow my heart and passion and my journey. And it just took me really on this journey of where then I was with GE for 5 years as part of their leadership program. I led global teams and professional services, worked everywhere from Saudi companies to Japanese companies to US energy companies. And last year I joined Oracle. About a year and a half ago, I joined Oracle. Over there, I'm leading their North America, what we call as strategic clients. So Oracle's top 100 clients in the US, and really taking them on this journey of how to digitally transform and modernize their systems. You probably heard you possibly heard of Southwest and what happened there, right? The systems just shut down. So we are living in a time, in technology particularly, where enterprises and large organizations are on very legacy systems, and they're at that tipping point of where they need to either modernize or lose out, on some of the newer tech that is coming up and starting out. So that's my journey, to take these big monolith organizations and really help transform them on their digital journey.
That's very interesting. But let me ask you a very controversial question. And the question is, had you not moved to the US, had you lived out here? And so tell me, or, tell the audience, that what was the possibility that you would have either joined politics or would have either become a tech professional?
Yeah, well, I was one of those fifth graders who, when they ask you to raise your hand and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said Prime Minister of Pakistan. So I probably think politics would have been a very natural path for me if I had stayed on in Pakistan, because my family's, in business, because my family's in politics. It was just very easy to follow that path, would have been very easy to follow that path. But you never know, right? When I moved to the US, I never thought I would get into politics.
So is there any political party your family has been associated with?
Well, my dad's always been associated with People's Party. So he was, as a student, in his student union, he was with People's Party, and he was in Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto's federal cabinet. I think since then, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think since then he's kind of stepped aside and, just helping wherever he can, make the right choices, the decision. But I know as far as Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto was there, he was very much, her fan and part of a cabinet, and, really loyal to her as he was to Prime Minister Bhutto back then. But
so did that influence you as well? Like,
that hugely influenced me. I think that hugely influenced me. And one, I saw him again, he was one of those who started at the local body level and really grew into where he was the federal minister. So I'd almost lived my entire life watching that political system. Uh, Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto would come to our house, and just she was such a dynamic person. And every time I saw her, it was, one of those, this young girl looking, 12-year-old girl looking at somebody and saying, I want to be like her someday, kind of thing. But then, when I moved to the US, obviously, I kind of stopped thinking about it, because you move to a new country and there are other things you're dealing with, right? You're living in a new country, you're building your life, you're raising your kids, then your career comes. So a lot of us kind of were on that journey and path.
Mm-hmm.
And then a moment comes, which came for me, was I now live in this country. How am I giving back? How do I belong? How am I rooted where I am part of this ecosystem as well? I got involved with the congressional campaign, and that's when I'm like, I have to get involved. Like, there is no way that I can sit on the sideline.
What year was this exactly?
This was, about 10 years ago.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm almost longer, like 2012. Is when I think I got involved with Congressman Eric Swalwell's campaign. I got involved because I wanted my son he was in high school, to have the same experience I had, because the experience of public service and meeting people and getting to know their issues and problems and being able to address them is very unique.
Mm.
And so the congressman was, he wasn't a congressman then, but he was running, and he was young, and he very much reminded me of my dad. And I'm like, okay, take my son and have him door knock with you so that he gets out of his bubble. He meets all these new people. And I think that's then, me and my daughter started door knocking for him, making phone calls, doing fundraisers. And before I knew it, I'm like, I have to get involved. And I'd been very much involved in the community. As a parent-teacher association, would we have the PTAs, as a, PTA mom. I was a Girl Scout mom, taking our girls to camps and stuff. So I was very involved with the kids' schools, and as they grew up,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of almost naturally my journey to how do I now, a city that has given me so much, that as I've been so involved with, how do I take it to the next level and step up and serve? And I think one of the things for me, it's always been, I will raise the hand. If I look around and I see there's a gap, I will raise the hand. And at that time, what I saw was that we did not have representation of our community, as the community was changing, as the face of the community was changing. I didn't see somebody with a background like mine, who had a background in technology, who was a mother, who was a first-generation immigrant, who was an Asian, having a seat at the table. And I felt like without having a seat at the table, there were decisions being made which did not include all these aspects that I was encompassing and I was representing. So for me, it was a lot about that. Be the first person who steps in, and then for people to come and say, she can do it, we can do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't easy, right? With a full-time corporate job, that's the number one question everybody asks me, that you had this full-time corporate job, your career was growing, and yet you were doing all of this. And it was hard, right? My evenings and weekends and everything else was given towards public service. But I really made an impact where I saw so many more people get involved in. And that's really what I wanted. I didn't want to be just, okay, I'm the one and that's it. I was like, I am the first one. But everybody else is like, oh, Sabina can do it. That's not hard. We can do it too. And that is exactly what happened.
So that was inspiring and fulfilling at the same time.
It was absolutely right. Because you can't, as a single person, you can't achieve things unless you have a community that believes in you and that wants to follow you.
Mm-hmm.
And you build a bench of people that will come as you move forward as well.
Now, let me ask you an important question, and that relates with your field. Put on your future projector hat, or where you could actually tell more about how do you see the future of technology itself. What are some of the emerging technology or tech that you see would be shaping our future going forward?
Yeah. So we all know the buzzword is ChatGPT,
Yeah.
right? And how AI, like finally, those of us in tech have known, lived AI day in and day out, but now it's become a common word where people are actually understanding
Yeah.
the capabilities. So the future of work, future of what technology is going to look like, it's obviously the little jobs, the menial jobs. A lot of them are being automated, right? So we have to almost be an intelligence level above the machines, the automation, because we've built that automation to make our lives easier. I think the next era is one going to be about a work-life balance. We've seen already during the pandemic, we saw that people really valued being able to spend time with their families, being able to um, not have to go into and deal with, at least I can talk about it from an American perspective, but I think also from Pakistani perspective, sitting in commute traffic for hours, wasting, and then there was the other added benefit that mothers and parents actually saw their kids grow up
Yeah.
in front
Yeah.
of them, right? And so a lot of these things added to people saying we actually can have a life and still work. And now there's legislation being passed around a 4-day work week, things like that. So the work-life balance where we're able to work smarter and still have, a work-life balance and not kill ourselves over some of these things via automation is going to be significant. So how we embrace and how we uh, kind of use technology to our advantage is going to be important. Some of the key things are obviously sustainability, right? The next generation is very much worried about the planet. So are we, right? What are we doing? How are we building a sustainable future? How are we being more inclusive in bringing people and rising them up, out of poverty by using technology? So all these factors are starting to play and will play a bigger role in how we become a more inclusive society, how we take people out of poverty, how do we save the planet. And those topics, technology is primarily going to be used to address some of those issues. The next generation, as I see them more and more, right, are much more inclusive in terms of what are we doing for everybody. They are kind of the we generation. How are we more responsible? How are we more inclusive? How are we taking care of things? And you will see technology being used for the greater and the larger good as well. In addition, again, technology is going to be a lot more automation, but it's also going to create a lot of opportunities in countries like Pakistan. That's, because it's now the world has become so flat with, even 10 years ago, WhatsApp or any of these apps were not there. And so communication was very different, right? I remember when I first moved to the US 27 years ago, I used to be able to call my parents for a 10 7-minute call on AT&T, once a week because it was very expensive. Now it's like we are constantly connected as a family unit. And I never feel like, even if I'm miles apart, that I'm that far away. And I think that's going to get closer and closer. We talk about FaceTime and those kind of things, but it'll become more and more virtual reality will make it easier for people to stay connected. And so technology is moving towards building a better future for us, more human interaction, more sustainability, more better opportunities. And it's a great time for, closing that divide between what we call developing and developed nations, right? Because it is really, as you are providing the same level of education to somebody in Pakistan, they can technically have the same job sitting right here in their village or home in Pakistan and delivered to somebody in the US or China or, London or wherever they are. So I think that is now, technology is almost that tool which is going to improve our life. So that's how I see it.
Now, Sabina, you've been visiting Pakistan for almost now past 12, 13 days, right? What's your reading of the economy right now in Pakistan, and how do you feel both as a Pakistani American and someone who's grown up in this country, to see the kind of situation that the country is going through in terms of economy.
I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing people say that it's getting harder and harder to make ends meet, right? That has been a very common theme. Obviously, we have our dollars. The spending power is great, obviously, which is almost a sad thing, because if I say, oh, this is less than $50 for me, but that $50 here in Pakistan is such a significant amount. And I think that's what saddened me a little bit. Like, you see the haves, you have even more. Honestly, like, every time I come in, I'm surprised at the cars that are being driven. But then, and that's with duty, right? So if I was living in Pakistan, I could probably not afford to buy the same car that I can buy in America because of the duty and how expensive it is. And yet you see them here. And then you see the really poor people who are living in one-bedroom houses, just don't even have beds, like on mattresses, 10 people in a family kind of situation. And then the middle class seems to be, I think we were having that conversation, seems to be pushed at the seams, right, of what's happening. So it's, that division that, is very stark, is what I continue to see. And that's the sad situation. Everything is way more expensive. I think people are just, some of the issues they're dealing with are policy issues as well, right? They're not sure that what will happen tomorrow, how much money can go out of the country, come inside the country. People can't, the buying power is just decreasing by the day. So, I mean, I don't want to be a gloom and doom, but what I see is that it just worsens the situation, that especially the disparity between the haves and the have-nots continues to grow, which is a sad state of things.
Yeah. So what would you have suggested, or what would you have done in order to, sort of cushion this, this kind of challenge that people at the lower rung are going through right now? So what would you have done?
So, I mean,
as a community leader.
Even as a policymaker, right? Yeah. We are able to deliver in the US. When I was serving on the council, our entire budget is based on our taxes. We cannot serve our people if we don't have the tax base, right? That's your property taxes, that's your sales tax. And one of the issues here is Pakistan, historically, people don't like to pay taxes, right? And people will always find ways and means. So, like I said, the wealth is there. The tax base is not there, right? So you see people having all these luxuries, and yet they're not willing to pay that taxes, and government can do very little with little taxes. That's why we continue borrowing, and then we borrow more money, and then, we kind of fix the holes. So, I mean, I know it's not the most popular topic ever when you talk about taxes, but people need to understand that when they go to America and they go to a city and they're like, oh, your roads are amazing. I'm like, yeah, because the people are paying taxes here, and that's the only way I can run this town. If we don't get taxes, we really can't take care of, there's grants and there's other things that come in. But the primary source is always tax base. So we have to have a very, a good tax policy in place which can be implemented as well. And the mindset of the people that, it's an important thing which helps you run and, your economy and build infrastructure and provide amenities and everything has to come from that tax base. And so I think that's what, even in the US now, we're starting to, and you're seeing the Biden policy where anybody making over 400,000, under 400,000, their tax base, the tax will not increase, but anybody making more than that, they will, even if they pay 1 or 2% more taxes, it's going to significantly boost the economy for there even.
So what would you have done if you were asked to, sort of like expand the tax base out here? What would you have done, by using technology or by incentivizing or encouraging people to come forward and become part of the tax net?
big policy decision, right? I'm being asked to think something which I would spend probably hours sitting down and writing policy. So I don't know if I have an immediate answer to that. But, certainly we have to put a policy in place that can help implement, right? Implementation is a big part of it. I know that certain level people whose paychecks go straight into the bank, get their taxes taken out. But then we have all this industry and wealth and businesses that have loopholes that
they're just simply run on cash.
That's simply, exactly. The cash is again a big one, where you don't know where the money went, what happened to it. And I know the government's been working over all those years, but I think once you get everything in a connected system using technology, right, everybody has to go through PO, your point of sale systems. Not only is it going to actually help them build a better business for themselves, but the government will also, it'll all be on the books. So making sure the books are not cooked is probably one way. But that's auditing, right? You get companies to audit what's going on. Auditing is a big part of how that checks and balances that happens. And so, that's one way that you audit people who say, this is it. Like, all right, independent auditor will look at it. And if you're right, then you're right.
So now from taxes, let's talk about leadership. Sabina, if I were to ask you, if you could recall who was the biggest influence when it comes to you being or assuming yourself to be in that role of leadership, be as a politician or as a tech professional, who were some of the people that sort of influenced your journey or mentored you to, seize those opportunities that you found as you went along your journey?
I think politically, I kind of mentioned that already, between my father's journey and Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto and, the influence she had on me on that journey. From a technology, I would, interestingly, I was on, I break my career up in two parts. The one that was as I was more of a parent and raising the kids and kind of doing stuff. And then when I made the journey to go into corporate America, I came to Pakistan and I did an internship with Mobilink at that time. Because I was seriously thinking, should I just move to Pakistan and, start my career
here? And what year was this?
This was 2006.
Okay.
17 years ago, And so my dad said, look, I know a couple of people. I will connect you with them. One was Sabina Zafar. She's since come back and now doing, I think Code for Pakistan is a nonprofit she just started. My dad connected me with her and had a conversation, and she really encouraged me. She's like, Sabina, just go and start. You've got a good background. You've got the degree. And she'd been through some things in her life as well, which got her. And she's like, look, I went to college really late. I went with my kids. I went to the US, studied. And she was one person. And so it's so interesting that years later when we connected, she is also she just retired as a VP from Oracle. And I'm like, do you remember me? That you may not remember that years ago, this young girl who was struggling with what to do, you advised me on where to go and continue on my journey. And then another friend of my dad's who's, Salman Ansari, he was also, I asked, Abuji connected me with him, and he also recommended, he's like, Sabina, just take the first step. It's just, you have to do it. Don't overthink what you want to do. Just go get a job, start working, and your path will take you forward. So those were the key people that while I was struggling on where to go, where to start, and they said, US, obviously you will have a bigger opportunity to be able to get your foot in the door, start something. Those were the people that really guided me on where I should be going. And then I think over the years, I've had amazing mentors and sponsors, I would say. I'm part of this group called Muslims in the C-Suite. And they included me as the first woman, even when I hadn't kind of joined, that level, and were very encouraging. And a group of people that encouraged me, that mentored me, that really, help sponsor some of them as my career progressed. So all these people that have come, over the years as part of my journey, other women leaders that have made sure that they pull you up, that they bring you along. I think so many people that have been part of this journey, but yeah, these are some of the names which I would say have truly, kind of led me, inspired me to, to continue on my journey.
And what were some of your own personal principles that you think were very instrumental in terms of, pushing you forward to become a leader as well?
I think the number one thing was I was impressing my kids.
Okay.
I really, as a parent, I think you do so much for your children, but sometimes you always want to be a hero to your children and for them to say, okay, mom did this, we can do this. So I think part of it was that. As far as principles go, right, for me, it's nothing happens without hard work. People can think there's shortcuts, there's ways. Nothing happens without hard work. And nothing happens without empathy. Like you truly, as a leader, the higher you rise, the more empathetic you have to be, because that is one of the key skills that connects you with people, that continues to make you real, And we have this phrase called radical candor, which we use as, it's a phrase coined out of this person who wrote a book about leadership that always resonates with me, which is like, be empathetic, but give real feedback so that you don't lead people in the wrong direction. Like continue to give them feedback on how they can improve, how they can get better. And so those are some of the leadership principles I've always adopted. You can almost call it tough love, where, hey, I really care about you. I really want to see your progress, but these are the gaps. Because if you don't have that feedback loop back to, who as a leader to your teams, they're never going to get better at what they're doing as well. So that's kind of been my leadership principle in terms of how I lead teams.
So as we're talking about leadership, Sabina, let me ask you, are you thinking to launch any initiatives in terms of, promoting leadership among women, either in US or either in Pakistan? Anything on the cards for you?
And so I have been very much a proponent of what we call returnships in the US. And returnship is a concept, it's a fairly new concept. It is a concept that women leave their careers almost mid-career, when they have kids, when they need to raise families. You see, even in the US, you see a lot of women, will leave the workforce because one of the partners is now decided to stay home, take care of the family, which is, perfectly fine. You want to do that. But then women primarily lose out on it, where they will take a 10 to 15 year break, and then the kids will grow up, and then, they're like, we missed out and we don't really know how to get back into the workforce. The world has changed around us. And so the returnship is a concept that you bring in women who are returning to work, and it can be women or men, but primarily it's women that are returning to work, and you almost give them an internship, but at a higher level, where, they have the experience, not only, the work experience from years ago, but also the life experience, and help them get their foot in the door, back into corporate. Interestingly, I was talking to a couple of friends of mine, and they were the ones that had actually started their careers way before I had. But then they went through the same journey, and now they're at a point where kids are going to college, high school, and they're like, we really want to do something, but we don't know where to start. We're completely blank. And I said, what do you think about this idea of returnship? And they're like, it would be phenomenal, Sabina, in Pakistan, for women to have that opportunity, because we generally start young, we have families, and then we're still living, longer, healthier lives. And so even at 50, you're not old enough to start your journey. Two women, I mentioned that to you earlier, who inspired me were Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein, both amazing, powerful women. And both these women started their political careers when their kids were in high school. With Nancy Pelosi, her 5th child was graduating high school when she decided to enter the political arena
Interesting.
at 50 years of age. And she is now the most influential woman in America, right?
Yeah.
So age is never a number. There's never the right time
Yeah.
to do the right thing. But you do sometimes need that opportunity. And I think returnships is something which I've been very passionate about, and I continue to see how we can invest in that.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I had that conversation with my friends last night, it was an aha moment for me that that's something I want to do for Pakistani women, right? I've done a lot for younger women. We've built the bench. We're trying to get them to come to tech, but we have this whole opportunity of...
Could you take this opportunity and look in the camera and probably tell potential employers and women out there that why they shouldn't give up on themselves, and why should employers be really eager and interested in getting women back in the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key skills, right, women learn even as they're raising their families, they're running their households, is project management, right? And that is one of the most important when I come to technology, right? That is one of the most important skills needed to make any technology project successful. So honing into that experience is just, I think, a phenomenal opportunity that we cannot miss, right? The life experience, there is no substitute for the life experience. And then you match that by training women who want to return back and now be an important part of that workforce, is a phenomenal and untapped opportunity that we should not miss out on. So I would absolutely say, start those programs within your organization. Even if you start with 5 women that want to come back, create it as a test, and you will see the results yourself, right? They're going to speak for themselves, because this is being proven again and again, and I would highly encourage. And anything I can do, I can help, right? I'm already every time I come to Pakistan, I'm there's other meaningful ways that you can give back, and I would love to give back in any way that I can to help Pakistani companies set this up.
Thank you very much for this, Sabina. Now let me bring you on this one topic that's probably closer to your heart as well, and you've actually also spoken about this as well. The prospect of healthcare and medical tourism, and quite recently there's been this discussion going on even in think tanks about exploring this prospect of medical tourism between Pakistan and the US. Where do you see that opportunity existing between the two countries, and what do you think Pakistan and the US will have to do in order to make Pakistan an industry and a market for people to come and seek medical services over here?
Well, as you know, medicine is one of the most expensive things in the United States, right?
Yes.
Of all the countries in the world, it's all about healthcare. Anybody you talk to, they're concerned if they won't have health insurance, if they won't get healthcare as they grow older.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is healthcare is one of the most expensive expenses in the United States. Cities, again, going back to local government, we build a fund for our employees to be able to have healthcare. People save for health benefits.
People spend a lifetime,
older.
Paying their medical bills.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, God forbid, if you don't have health insurance, then the medical bills are just, healthcare is very, very expensive. And there are so many opportunities. Like you said, that medical tourism, Turkey is becoming a destination for that. I don't know if you've,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's people are going to Turkey to get primarily for cosmetic.
Okay.
So it's interesting, even though we talk about healthcare, the cosmetic industry, the laser industry, all of that stuff is also thriving at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes out of, medicine and medical practices as well. But one of the, we'd have to have very thoughtful, almost written up marketing campaign and policy that we write and, that we sell to US, right? The government is probably going to help make some of the some of the transition to be able to get visas or be able to travel and all of that easier.
And other regulatory decisions.
And other
perhaps.
regulations and all of that stuff. But in the end, the people have to believe that this is where we want to go for our health services. And it is going to be cheap enough. It's significantly cheaper to get medical treatment here, even without health benefits, right? So that ticket becomes kind of, hey, I'm going to, travel and buy that ticket to come and seek medical care over here. We have to, promote the quality of healthcare. That is very important. People need to believe that they will truly, they will go and they will get the same surgery for 1/20th the price of what they would be paying anywhere else, because healthcare is also all about trust. So being able to build that trust, being able to showcase that truly you have the same world-class healthcare available in Pakistan that you would have in the US is an important one. One of the cool tools we have is that obviously there's a lot of Pakistani physicians. The Pakistani physician infrastructure is very strong, right? They're a connected community. They're doing a lot. And for them to be advocates of also bringing some of these health services to Pakistan and really showcasing, through their trusted network that, hey, we are Pakistani origin doctors and there's the same level of healthcare available. So that's going to be an important one. And then investing in the infrastructure and the facilities is going to be an important one, right?
Yeah. So how important do you think is the level of engagement? Do you think it has to be bottom-up approach that has to be taken, or does it have to be top-bottom approach? Or does it have to be between the government to government, or does it have to be between the private sector?
So government to government will, for the policies and, for the ease of all the travel and, the logistics and all of that, that's going to be at the government level. At the private level, I think the private industry will have to play a significant role in building this ecosystem, right? They're going to be, again, government will not be able to build all these hospitals and facilities, but if the private industry can come together and say, as a conglomerate, we want to create these facilities and then really market ourselves as, so much of it is about people knowing something. You saw travel just increased multifold with apps like Instagram and, where people started following these influencers as well. So part of it is marketing, right? Part of it is marketing and showing what is available as well. Unless people know, they really don't know where to come and what's available. So part of it is getting the word out, and that falls more on the private sector to get that word out. And then part of it is a collaboration between the Pakistan government and the private sector to build those facilities. But again, it starts with a very thoughtful health care policy in Pakistan saying we have an intention now to become the health tourism capital of the world, and then thoughtfully driving towards that, because that'll take time, right? It's not going to magically happen, but the intention, if that's set and that we're driving towards it, then kind of everybody can follow that.
Another area that's very closer to my heart is the potential of having a tech corridor between Pakistan and the US. Where do you see that potential going forward as a tech professional, and what are some of the things that perhaps both countries need to get done right? And it's more for Pakistan, I suppose. And where do you see the level of engagement, again, between the private sector to get this thing going?
Yeah. So, again, I think one of the things tying in with healthcare is telehealth is becoming very big, right?
Yeah.
That is, again, a huge opportunity where it doesn't really matter where the physician is. It matters what the qualification is, how comfortable somebody is. And so being able to set up those telehealth and using technology for the telehealth, and now with 5G and everything, even your surgeries will be possible without you actually physically being there, and you can actually guide somebody. And so a physician, a highly qualified physician sitting in MIT could guide a surgery right here in Pakistan because of, technology as well. As far as that tech corridor goes, right, It's very much a supply and demand kind of situation as well. We've seen what India's done in the last 40 or so years to truly create that ecosystem, and part of it has been just educating their middle class, educating people who, their large population. Again, they have the population issue, but they really honed it and started training and educating them, where it organically, as people started building companies, moving to the US, started seeing the gap in tech talent, they started bringing that to India. So we have to do the same thing, right? To really build that corridor, we have to, one, make sure we educate our people. I think that is the number one priority. And then not just educate them, but train them to work at that same level, at that global level. Because when we have that supply, the demand will come. You're obviously seeing, and I see this as a very interesting point in the US, where you're seeing a lot of layoffs. You're seeing companies, scaling down and freezing hiring and all of that. And that's not because their revenues are not going up, but because they think they're paying somebody too much for doing the work that they could get for 1/4 the price, which is an opportunity for Pakistan, which really, when you have a well-trained workforce, and we have an opportunity with the young workforce we have, with people now going to colleges, to really be able to upskill them and train them where they can be immediately employable for some of these companies, and build that, start building that corridor almost that you're talking about, and funneling them into, because once you get 1, 2, 3, it's a start. So it's happening. It's not as fast as we would like for it to be, but that's partly because I think there's still a certain gap between how skilled people are and if they will be able to perform at that same level. But I think that is our biggest advantage. If we can upskill people, if we can train them, if we can have them work at the same level that a highly skilled person in the US is working at, we have the opportunity. These next 10 years are going to be significant in who is ahead of that race. And the faster we can do it, our people are smart. They're hungry. They want to do stuff. We just, want to make sure we give them the opportunity. And
so, Sabina, let's talk about public service now. After achieving your American dream, you decided that you have to give it back to the community. Now let's sort of compare your experience in the US with that of Pakistan. What is it that you see missing out here in terms of governance mechanisms out here to promote that level of, sense of responsibility among people, that they should also feel encouraged to give it back to the community as well once they've achieved something in their life?
Yeah, I think part of it is cultural, frankly. We give a lot of money, we support a lot of causes. I see very few people that actually just want to give their time to serve something. We almost have to, the local level structure is very interesting in the US, where it's built to bring in people to come and serve their communities, even if they're giving an hour back to their community. I see the local bodies missing here in Pakistan. I think they were there for a while.
Yeah, it's been a long while. We haven't had them, or even if we've had them, they're not that functional.
Yeah.
So how different is it in the US?
So I don't know Pakistani local level that well, but I can say in the US, it's really the local government which takes care of your day-to-day, right? You have a pothole somewhere. Your council member is going to get a call and be like, there's a pothole there. Who's going to fix it? You have a broken pipe somewhere. You have a tree that fell. All of that, obviously we have this whole system of garbage pickup. And, my parents always come and they're like, can we have something like this in Pakistan where, the garbage comes and gets picked up on a certain day and, it's clean and everything. Those kind of things are implemented at a local level, right? Because they're very local. They're local to the community you live in, they're local to the people, and it makes the representative very close to the people they represent, right?
Yeah.
They're not sitting in some office in DC and not be approached. This is like, hey, they're your neighbors, they're in your community. And so I think in Pakistan, we almost need to bring that community and the local, if you will, giving back, almost create a system for that, right? Where it's well run, where it's approachable, where people can actually connect with their local representatives to then take their issues to the federal legislature or at the provincial level or something. But I think that's what we need. We need local committees and commissions made of people who know their stuff, right? Who, for example, policymakers. You are making policies, you're thinking about these things day in and day out. Policymakers that are focused on that specific things are way smarter than somebody who may have been elected to that role. And so have those advisory teams as somebody who advises your local representatives as well to make better decisions.
Yeah.
I think that's what we really need in Pakistan.
Tell us about your experience of, getting elected to the office. Like how many votes did you get? How easy was it to sort of, mobilize your constituency and, every challenge that you sort of confronted along the way? How was it for you?
So in the beginning, I had no idea how to do this. Part of, I think, when I started thinking about running for office, I learned about this program which trains women to run for office. So that was, I think, my step one of really understanding how the system works, how you run for office, how do you raise money to run for office, how do you market yourself. So I went through that program. It's called Emerge California. I went through that program for like 8 months with another 40 women from all across the state, all different backgrounds, with the same passion. We want to give back. We want to be part of, our communities, but we don't know how. So I think that for me was really the stepping stone into, okay, so this is how you actually do this. And then being somebody who'd, first generation immigrant, being somebody who wasn't a white male in a very conservative city, I had to break in and build trust with a lot of people for them to really trust me. And then campaigning is a whole different beast, right? It's very much, I don't think it's any different than here in Pakistan. You have to market yourself. I think the difference is you're able to raise money, right? It's all a very transparent process, but you're able to raise money and funds where you can, to fund your campaign. And then you just door-to-door knock. That is the magic, right? You knock on people's doors. You tell them I'm running for local office. I would love to get your vote. And you kind of just, build a team. So for me, I was fortunate because my daughter was in high school and I'd been a PTA mom and everything. So I had a lot of volunteers from the high schoolers who really wanted to learn, be part of it. And so these high schoolers actually started building sub-teams. And, I had a social media team, and then I had a finance, kind of managing my events team and all of that. Because really it's doing a full-time job.
And much of these were high schoolers?
A lot of them were high schoolers, right? Again, we are very much, community focused on schools. The kids are just very driven, and so they just all wanted to get involved with the campaign. My daughter helped me she was in high school, but she kind of helped me build that volunteer portal, volunteer base, the website, all of that little stuff that you think about. So very heavily volunteer run campaign. And that kind of, in a way, was my way of also giving back for these kids to learn how this whole stuff works. So, when I got elected, people were obviously very, who is this? Again, we think of America as a very diverse community, but there, obviously we're still, we've just elected our first woman of color as a vice president. So there's a long way we have to go. So you deal with, all of those things where trust issues and people not knowing, and then people thinking, who is this? Somebody who hasn't lived here for the last 200 years and, now thinks they can run for office. All of those things, nuances play a part. But you just, you continue to give the message that you believe in. You continue to bring people along on that journey. And you just continue to work hard. I mean, I think meeting people door to door, knocking and actually listening to their issues and being able to address those is probably the most rewarding experience, any campaign experience you can have. And so I think that's how I kind of, won my first election and earned people's trust over time by doing the right things, by representing them where they truly felt like they were listened to. I had very much a social media presence out there because I wanted to connect with people, for them to know what I'm doing out there in the community and then how they can approach me. Yeah. Right? So you have to be very approachable.
And you've spoken about your voter base as well. Like we were having that conversation earlier. Who did they comprise of?
So the voter base is primarily, in my city, is primarily still very much Caucasian. We have a growing population. So when I moved to San Ramon, we were almost 85% primarily white. And then as we built more housing, a lot of Asians moved into the community, highly educated, and when we say Asia, it's like the entire continent of Asia, 4.2 billion people are in that Asian bucket, whether it's Pakistani descent, Indian descent, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, everybody kind of. And so our population in San Ramon shifted to 52% Asians now, and there was no representation. And that was another, stickling point for me where I said, you have to have representation of this newer community that has come in that represents, and that was a growing voter base that also kind of changed and, I think set the stage for me to be elected as the first Asian American council member in my city as well. So, then I guess, that's.
So you've spoken about, exporting our tech expertise to the US and to the outside world. You did speak about India, but let me ask you again very specifically, what did India do differently than Pakistan that made sure that, you have a higher number of representation of talented Indians in the US tech industry? So what can Pakistan actually learn from India in that case?
Yeah. And I'll refer back to this podcast I was listening on NPR actually a few years back. And they were interviewing these 4 guys who were the initial founders of this vision of IIT, right? So the these tech universities in India, which are like sometimes even considered better than Harvard now because they're so much more competitive. These guys came to the US and said, what is the one thing that draws people to the US from all over the world? And it was the higher education system. People always want to go and study in a US university, get that higher education. And because they know with that higher education, it puts them on that path to a better life, better education. So they said, why can we not emulate some of that and bring that to India? So in the 60s is when they sowed the seeds for this higher education system in technology. And by the time upskilling them to where they can be significant, contributors to the world economy. And that's the lesson, right? Unless we can educate and we can mass educate, education needs to be compulsory. It just needs to be compulsory, right? No kid should be begging on the streets. No child should be working in houses. Every child should be mandated to go to school. And that's really where we're going to have to...
And with the right skill set.
With the right skill set, and then the higher education.
On this note, Ms. Sabina Zafar, we're going to conclude our discussion today. And thank you so much for being part of InferTalks today. Thank you so much for staying with us through this conversation with Sabina Zafar. Our team works very hard to make this work possible. And it would mean the world to us if you could like and share our content to show your support. And if you would like to stay informed on upcoming podcasts and other work, please hit the bell icon.